Thank you, everybody, for joining us today, and hello from Hawaii, wherever you may be. Um, we are now going to embark on the long-awaited launch of Bamboo Ridge 118. Believe it or not, Bamboo Ridge started in 1978, and if you can count fast, that's over 40 years ago. Now, we have a long history, and if you're interested in old former issues, you might want to look at 118. We have 118. We have a story about our preservation site where you can access some of our old copies. Um, Juliet and I would like to welcome you. And Juliet, you have a few words to say now?
Yeah, just to say hello to everyone and thank you very much for issue 118. Um, it's a lovely book, and I was happy to work with you. And I'm just going to sit back and relax and enjoy and drink.
Yeah, okay. Now, 118 is also a special issue for us because during this time we lost two of our stalwart members of Bamboo Ridge support group, Marie Hara and Joe Tsuji, and we have a couple of things that they wrote, and I think you'd enjoy them if you have your copy of 118. Um, if you are in 118, that means that Juliet and I love your work. So rather than have me introduce you, I'm going to have you introduce yourselves to our audience and tell us about your work and about yourself. I'll just tell everybody your name, and you can go right ahead. Our first person up is Diane DeCillis from Michigan. Page 74.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. I want to thank Eugene for all of your efforts and determination to make this happen through the COVID and everything else. I really appreciated all your emails and everything you've done. So I'd like to start with that. And I'm going to start by, I'm holding up a copy of my book. I don't know if you can see it, but the name of it is called When the Heart Needs a Stunt Double. And it just got released from Wayne State University Press recently in April. And the name of the book is When the Heart Needs a Stunt Double, is referring to times when you have very challenging circumstances, whether it's loss or other things, and you wish you had somebody who could stand in for you and sort of take the hit. So that was what it was originally. Before I finished my book, I realized I had to have open heart surgery because I had a muscle that grew too thick. It was growing since I was young, and it got so thick that they had to give me open heart surgery and shave it. So this is what my poem is about. And the poem is called The Art of Kintsugi. I wrote this for my surgeon before I went in for surgery because I wanted him to think of me as a human being and not just a patient on the table. So Kintsugi is the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold dusted lacquer to highlight rather than hide its fractures. It's also known as the art of precious scars. All right. To make the repair, the surgeon must fracture the sternum east-west. He must think in halves to spread the ribs right, left, and then consider what is right, what is left. He must palpate the jagged edges of loneliness. Once I dated a guy. It was snowing. There was a concert. We were to go together. Words drove us apart. When he ran to his car, sped off, I ran after him, my hands clamped to the bumper, feet sliding in snow, the zigzag of tracks, my EKG before letting go. In order for the surgeon to find the wound, he must feel the muscle that builds the walls that have grown too thick. Observe how hard the muscle has worked, lifting and lowering the weight of love and sorrow. To make the repair, the surgeon must admire the beauty of wholeness, cobble and collage, in order to form the gilded scar that marries the sides, smooths the edges. Thank you.
Restrooms, one shower. And again,
Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, next in line is Joseph Hardy from Tennessee. And Joseph, I suffer from the same thing. Page 114.
There you go. So my name is Joseph Hardy, Joe to my friends. I live in Nashville, Tennessee with my wife, and I've been writing seriously for about 4 years and have had some good fortune in the last 2 to have a number of things accepted. I also have a book. I'm going to shamelessly promote it right now. It's called The Only Light Coming In, and it is on Amazon if you're interested. If not, terrific anyway. Let me tell you briefly what this poem is about. Jean said she suffers from it. I certainly understand that. Jean, it turns out there's 2 different pronunciations for this problem that we suffer from. You can call it tinnitus or tinnitus, and somehow the word tinnitus sounds better to me. And this is a poem about things that are hard to explain. Tinnitus. Our mother taught us neglect as a hole in the air, an unpredictable vacancy of mind. I've wanted to share it for years as the taste of something awful, but it resists conveyance. Like the sound of my sister's tinnitus, mine, a thin blade bowing the edge of an unforgiving file. Hers, I couldn't say. Only that as a child, sometimes it kept her from sleeping. Perhaps that sound a freight train makes, steel wheels repolishing the rails on a slow curve. Years ago, I lived above those tracks. Bedroom window, yards from 16 trains a day. And truly, like neglect, within a week, unheard. Except for long nights with flu or ache in bed when the stuttering, laden cars at 2:05 a.m. rolled south, squealing their long complaint. 164 I counted once, going somewhere, carrying something, out of mind any other time. And there, leaving me in need, wanting all these disconnected ways, a new way of speaking. The poetry a child expresses, stunned by a sharp and sudden pain, whose mouth opens. In that silent, oh, we hear. We've all heard before the shriek. Like my sister once, holding my mother's head against her own and asking, can't you hear it?
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Oh, that'll be a memorable thing. You remember how you got interrupted. Okay, and page 124.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for publishing these poems. Just to let you know, I do, since everyone's kind of sharing, I do have the 2 books by members who are here, Jean Toyama, Juliet Kono, and Christy Passion, called No Choice But to Follow and What We Must Remember. It's linked poetry or Renshi poems. Also, I have my own book of poems called Manoa's Dream, and basically it's, I write in pidgin poems and standard English poems. So thank you so much, basically Bamboo Ridge Press and Jean and Juliet for accepting these poems, 3 poems in this issue. So thank you. The first one, well, I have 3 short poems. The first one is Famolari. For look taller, my mother said, no can wear long tops or long skirts cause gonna drag you down. Gotta wear short jackets, wear high heel shoes, Famolari. I no can wait till I was old enough to dress like my mother and wear the nice wedges with waves engraved on the side. Now no more Famolari. My mother said, you don't need Famolari, you tall already. The next poem is called Stickers and Happy Face Stamp. I asked my mother if I could bring stickers to school. She said no, because no good I bring stickers to school, but I brought the stickers anyway. My mother was right. Everybody was saying stuff like, nice your stickers, I like. By the end of the day, I only had a few stickers left. Lucky thing I never bring my favorite stickers. One other time, I asked my mother if I could bring her happy face stamp to school. She had one nice stamp that she let us use at home. She said, I no can bring the stamp. I never listened. I brought the stamp to school. The whole class was so happy. Everybody was saying, I like stamp. I was stamping everybody's hands. Then they were saying, I like try. Then other kids were stamping happy faces on each other. My teacher took away the happy face stamp from somebody and told the class that she would keep the stamp because not supposed to bring this kind of stuff. I was sweating. After class, I told the teacher that I brought the stamp. I wanted the stamp back, but she said my parents had to pick it up from her. Was all my fault. I'm not supposed to bring the stamp to class. My mother and father came to my class and she was talking to my teacher. I shame, not because my teacher was complaining about me. It was how she was complaining. She was talking down to them like they stupid. My skin felt hot and I was sweating. Not my parents' fault I never listened to them. I sat there wishing it was over. I wish I never bring the happy face stamp. I wish I listened to my mother in the first place. My parents never say much. They look each other and sigh. Because no matter what they say, my teacher keeps scolding them. When the conference was over, I told my mother and father that I'm sorry. They knew I was sorry and I'm not supposed to bring the stamp in the first place. But the teacher not supposed to talk to us like that. What kind of teacher that? And my last poem is Waipahu Rain. Nowadays, no rain too much in Waipahu, but before time, we used to get plenty rain. Whenever we walk Cornet, we pass by canals with small fishes inside. Sometimes rain so hard when we go elementary school, the frogs hop around the grass and get choke mushrooms growing everywhere. Nobody eat the mushrooms because we know the mushrooms get poison inside. Even though get plenty rain, no need worry about flooding because my Jichan built one drainage system for our house. Whenever rain, the water follows one path and goes down the driveway. When raining and cold, my mother make corn chowder. Sometimes she make chicken or turkey soup. We all drink warm soup and talk about the rain. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Bamboo Ridge.
Thank you, Anne. Okay, bring back the Hanabata time. Okay, our next writer is Brenda Kwon. I saw you there, Brenda. Page 140.
Thank you for the page number, Jean, and thanks for having putting it all together. So this is so fun to be here. So I'm Brenda. I've been writing with Bamboo Ridge for a while and just so grateful to them for all the opportunities they've provided. And since everyone's showing their books, which I love, this is mine. So it's called The Sum of Breathing and it's still available. It's a collection of poetry, memoir, and prose. And so feel free to check it out if you like what you hear. And the piece I'm going to share today is called Refuge, and it's about my stepdad. Like maybe some of you, I'm in a stage where my folks are getting older and their bodies are changing, and so are their minds. And so my stepdad has pretty progressive dementia. And it's been really interesting to see what remains and what's fallen away. So this poem is for him, and it's called Refuge. Some sanctuaries have holes in their roofs so large that they swallow the sky. You stand under cover beneath only what is solid. Ignore the jagged and splintered edge in your periphery that frames large, wish-swallowing skies. Long before your forgetting began, you commanded details like soldiers kept in formation in battles and wars against the unknown. Not knowing was a luxury only for those whose fathers weren't hunted by the imperial police, whose dogs weren't shot to keep the hiding hidden, whose treasures didn't contain shrapnel having just missed soft flesh. For you, vigilance was safety. information, survival. Even after the wars had run their course, you clung to the knowing that it served you so well. You asked the impersonal. We supplied you with facts. Flight itineraries, what we ate for lunch, when we last serviced our cars, if we'd gotten new pets. To us, it was tedious conversational minutia. For you, the affirmation that we were still alive. Now there is usually only one question pinpointing the day's most pressing need. Like the time our mom stayed too long at the doctor's and you called and asked, "Where is your mom?" I quickly learned the rhythm of your memory, the ping of the phone, the flash of your name, and then incoming call, decline or accept. Each time you dialed, I took your call, replied as if I never had before. Each time I heard your relief anew, carrying you forward, knowing you'd be back. Together, we built and rebuilt your safety, replaying assurance like a favorite song. We keep our dance to small, tight circles beneath solid shelter, just adjacent to storms. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Your backstory helped me. Thank you. Our next reader is Lanning Lee. Lanning, can I tell everybody I was your 8th grade teacher? I already did.
9th grade French teacher. Oui. It's
143, 143.
No, I'm going to start on 274 with my poem.
Okay, fine.
Page 274. I'd like to thank you, Jean and Juliet, for publishing me. It's always a wonderful honor to be published. And I'm only sure to thank Daryl Lum and Eric Chalk for founding this publication and this press way back in 1978, before Jean was born.
Thank you.
This happened to me the very first day I went to the University of Wisconsin at Madison. I was headed onto campus to register for my English classes. And I met these nice guys in Madison, Wisconsin. Alexa, set 8-minute timer.
8 minutes, starting now.
Midwest Aloha. 4 fresh-faced white Wisconsin farm lads, maybe raised on this morning's milk and cheese and home-churned butter, rocket their beat-up red sedan through the city of Madison. Perhaps looking for action different from daily farm chores, they slow down to visit me on the side of the highway. 1, maybe 18, rolling down the passenger side window. "Remember Pearl Harbor?" he shouts, smiling at the greeting. Then all 4 explode in red-faced laughter, speed off, leaving me not quite realizing my first encounter with racism. From my home on Oahu, I can see Pearl Harbor, picture bombs bursting, the flames, the screaming, all that horrible, deadly disaster that led us to war. I can see US internment camps, Nazi concentration camps, my father fighting in the European theater, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the extermination of Jews. All this leaves me wondering, their hatred not yet registering, how did these young white boys even know where I lived or think that I'd ever forget the place I come from?
Wow, how appropriate in our times.
Yeah. And now I'm turning to page 118. This one is called False Willy Willy. Outside my house, right out here, I have what is recognized as the largest specimen of false Willy Willy in the state of Hawaii.
Wow.
And they're asking me if I can put up a plaque, but I'm not sure that I want to do that because my niece who's watching today and my nephew are going to inherit this house. And if they ever want to do something they've got to be sure never to touch that tree. That's one of the stipulations. And so I'm not sure I want the plaque there, but it's called False Willy Willy. Talk about chomping at the bit. I was entering my final semester as a senior at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, so eager to get out and head for the graduate program in English at the University of Wisconsin. I'd heard from everyone and his mother that it would be colder than hell come winter in Madison, but I didn't care. I was tired of Honolulu, sick particularly thinking about my ex. I wanted out, but Anna was a second semester freshman, born and raised on the big island of Hawaii. She graduated from Hilo High. She said she was a Viking through and through. I mentioned how much I loved Hilo, how my family had camped there often. She said, my heart, you know, I'll always be there in Hilo. I've never visited a place that I thought was better. We were in Econ 130, for me, the last core curriculum class. The first day we sat side by side in the front row. This was a 12:30 class, post-lunch for lots of folks, pre-lunch for me, given my back-to-back classes. We were in Bilger 151, the big chemistry auditorium. Dr. Miller steamed into class, puffing and a little bit red in the face. He donned the neck mic with a bit of difficulty and, leaning against the large desk in front, greeted us, announcing right off. Remember, this was the mid-70s. Times were different. Hello, all. I have to warn you folks down in the first three rows or so, that I always enjoy a liquid lunch at Pizza Hut. So you may want to bring umbrellas or wear raincoats, since I sometimes spit when I get passionate about the subject matter. Anna and I looked at each other and grimaced. A guy just behind me said, you're kidding, right? No, Dr. Miller said. Truly, I am not. The guy and most of us in the saliva zone groaned. The folks up in back were cracking up. After going over the syllabus, spitless so far, and telling us that we'd really enjoy the textbook because he wrote it himself, so we all had to buy it because he lived off the royalties rather than his teaching salary, which was so low, he said, I leave you with this final thought. By the time the semester is over, if you learn nothing else, you will understand exactly what I mean when I tell you there is absolutely no such thing as a free lunch. You may not know what that means at this moment, but you will by the end. And be prepared, I give you this huge hint that you'll have to explain what it does mean at the end on the final exam. Remember, there is no such thing as a free lunch. He released us. And as Anna and I headed for the exit, I said, I don't know what he means by there being no such thing as a free lunch. So while I'm still this ignorant, if you didn't eat yet, can I buy you lunch? Which would mean that it'd be free for you, although I guess it really wouldn't be. Anna crinkled up her nose, then laughed. Well, I just ate before class, but you could buy me a free cup of coffee. I could tell she was Hapa, half Caucasian, and by her last name, half Japanese. Because it's not so obvious with me, I told her that I was Hapa, half Caucasian, half Korean. My last name's Korean Lee, I said, and I'm Norwegian, a Viking, just like you. I'm Hapa too, she said, and explained her mix. What I'd known already at first glance, she confirmed. The combination in her was pretty stunning. We both grabbed coffee, me a sandwich too, at the cafeteria. Sitting outside, I asked her about growing up, what school had been like, what got her to UH Manoa. She wanted to know about the English major because that was one she was looking at. She talked about winning the English Scholar Award in her senior class, and how much she loved reading and writing. Then she asked, what are you going to do after this semester, after you graduate? I hesitated, gave her a long, did I want to tell this woman that I was up and leaving Hawaii? I was definitely attracted to her. Would this kill any chances with her? I had no idea whether she was attracted to me. Bottom line, should I lie to her right off the bat? I was trained a good Lutheran, so there are three things I know for sure. One, if it looks like bread and wine, then that's all it is, bread and wine. Two, you cannot buy your way into heaven. And three, lying is very, very bad. I speak from experience, guiltily so, when I say that it is not good if you lie during a conversation that may lead to a relationship with someone who revs your engine. I'm headed for Madison, Wisconsin for a graduate program in English. This admission made me feel, Alexa, stop. Thank you.
Finish the
Oh.
paragraph.
Can I say two? My first book, 866 Love Haiku. My second book, 155 Shakespearean Sonnets. And this just recently published, my memoir.
Wow.
My memoir.
Oh, Lally,
From point
did you
A
finish?
to C to Y to B, a sentimental journey through Hawaii and Wisconsin. Anyway, they're all available on Amazon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lanning. Okay, we are
Thank you.
ahead of schedule, but that's all right. We hold your questions. Our next reader, our next writer is Marion Lyman-Mersereau, page 171. Marion.
Oh, Jean, nobody ever said my last name so beautifully.
I was forcing it.
As a French teacher for you. Yeah, well done. Yeah, I think this piece speaks for itself, so I'm not going to speak for it.
Okay.
It's called Lay Conversation. Manuahi is a word I remember hearing for the first time when I was quite young, and I went to Mauna Kea Street to buy lei with my dad. Dad bought several lei, and when given a few extra, he was told by the lei seller, "For you, Manuahi." Walking back to the car, I asked Dad why he got extra lei and what did Manuahi mean? My dad explained that Manuahi means free or gratis, and that the lei seller was being generous. I was reminded of this since I heard a conversation on the radio this morning about lei sellers, as I was coincidentally stringing a lei using coal blossoms, the bright orange pua that looked like wrinkled bambucha ilima. I've learned recently it's one of the few native flower lei. The blossom comes from a tall tree so that you can only gather the flowers that have fallen to the ground. This requires a lot of bending and squatting, a great morning workout. Throughout the conversation on the radio, I kept listening to the recorded stories from lei sellers back in the day, but I didn't hear the word Manuahi mentioned. But maybe it was. I tuned in late. I tried to call in. I had so much to share, but my call didn't get through. I also wanted to share about the place where I used to pick white ginger buds for lei. When we opened each bud, they looked like butterflies, and we would string them with stamens lined up and overlapping so they resembled a feather lei. Our old ginger patch is now a parking lot where Paradise Park used to be, making me think of what happened to Paradise in the tune Big Yellow Taxi by Joni Mitchell. And how before canoe regattas, my crew would get together after we picked grocery bags full of plumeria, and we'd make so many lei for our fellow Huinalu Canoe Club paddlers. And one year, we gathered kaunaoa from the University Avenue off-ramp, where the burnished gold parasitic plant Lanai's flower crawls over the dry grass. We entwined the kaunaoa with rope tea leaf lei, and together, they were stunning and perfect since gold is one of our canoe club's colors. Nowadays, after you finish a race, you're lucky if you get a lei made from one strand of yarn with a candy bar tied to it. Still a gesture of kindness and congratulations, I suppose, but sans the beauty and fragrance. And how there's a war in Lower Manoa between three vines occurring on a chain link fence my neighbor erected around his vacant lot. My Pakalana and Stephanotis and the invasive banana poka are vying for supremacy, And I want to make sure the banana polka doesn't win and the Stephanotis and Papalena learn to live together peaceably. And how it's a joy to string or vili flowers into a lei, to work with nature in a way that allows us to wear her. I've never had the patience to make feather lei or weave lauhala, and I so admire those who do. I enjoy how quickly a lei, unless it's an intricate vili creation, can be quickly strung and yet give so much joy, especially when there's no reason for the lei other than there were flowers, so a lei was made and given. And how I know there's a school where I used to pick puakeni on a daily basis and make several lei to give teachers, but now, since I don't go there very much anymore and nobody else seems to be picking the flowers, there are hardly any to pick. When I pick the few blooms there, I have to make sure I don't cut the stems too short or there will only be enough for a lei po'o. Some plants I've learned will keep recreating flowers as long as they are picked, which I think makes the plant feel that it's appreciated. I feel a silent, gracious nod from the flowering bushes or trees after I finish picking when I say mahalo for their kahiau, a single Hawaiian word which takes 6 English words to define it. Lavish generosity without expectation of return.
Kahiao.
Kahiau.
Wonderful. Kahiao.
This one's two more short poems. I don't have an Alexa, Lanning, but I meant to start my stopwatch. For a good while after I wake, my eyes well up with tears, which makes me wonder if there lies a deep-seated grief that fills some psychological dam during the night, then spills over in the morning. Or maybe they are tears of joy just to see another morning, witness my breath, hear birds' melodies, feel the great press of gravity that gives my body solidity. Or could it be joy and grief combined without my awareness? Or possibly simply my vision needs a good wash from whatever fearful nightmares or fanciful dreams visited me when I wandered where I was not fully there. Mm-hmm. And this one, I'll just say the date I wrote it and all will be clear. It's called Just Clouds, September 13th, 2001. On any other day, the perfect puffy cloud just behind the mango tree, backlit by this morning's bright sun, highlighting its soft white curved edges, would bring to mind cherub cheeks, risen dough, cotton candy, chubby dimpled babies' butts, Rubenesque women's breasts. But today the round cloud framed by blue and green only makes me think of the billows of smoke that first burst from the building soon after impact, that wrapped ethereal arms around the proud structure, then concealed its total collapse like the Houdini vanishing act, where the sheet is pulled up over the magician, and in moments when the cloth is dropped, he's gone. Yet in that act, the magician instantly reappears elsewhere in the theater. In this act, there is no reappearance. There is no magic. I long for clouds to just be clouds, not shaped like huge mushrooms, not full of pollutants, not smoky bundles of dust, vaporized steel, concrete, marble, wallboard, bone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jane,
Marion.
Juliet, Bamboo Ridge, all you people that make it happen.
Thank you, writers. Thank you. Okay, our next writer is Jennifer Madriaga. Jennifer, where are you? Page
Aloha.
Page 175.
Hey everyone, I'm here from Durham, North Carolina. Thanks for joining. I'm gonna read a couple poems. I wanna thank Bamboo Ridge for publishing my work over many years. They were the first ones to publish me when I was in grad school many moons ago, and I'm glad to maintain a relationship. with them over all these years, and it helps tie me to my home state. So mahalo. So the first poem, well, the next couple poems I'm reading are actually part of a project I did with Tupelo Press. It was a 30-30 project where I wrote a poem a day for 30 days. And this was one of the poems that came out of it. Obscuring. In between birth and death are the spaces too many to count and remember, but some survive the abyss. Like the time I saw the sun's delicate corona, gray and green, tendrils so fine that no photograph can capture it. The moon shadow cooled the afternoon by 20 degrees, and the insects hummed in the most surreal twilight I will ever know during an early August afternoon in Greenville, South Carolina. Beside me stood a man who could never love me, but he placed his arm around me as I shed tears at the sight of a fully blocked sun. He could not love me, and yet he was here, locked with the unforgettable. I looked over to my son, who loved us both, his face bathed in streetlight and eclipse shadow, and I hoped he would only remember the purity of the moment, not the fighting beforehand or the trip home after, where we struggled through back roads traffic so terrible that some cars pulled over and surrendered to wait it out. That man could never love me, but he knew enough to be tender, to walk over to kiss my son on the forehead. Some moments are so quiet. Those are the ones that break me wide open with the strength of their stain. And then the next poem I'm going to read is called Vanished. So banished with a V and then vanished with a V. The body contains memory that the conscious mind has forgotten. In my dreams, my mouth speaks Ilocano fluently, and I can sing the highest notes on pitch. And my body is pliable and able to climb high places without fear. I am haunted by the shadows of large mango trees in passing. I can still remember the juice that overflowed upon peeling their fruit. My mouth and hands always grateful and sticky. The emerald world was full of noise and talking in my native dialect. People I loved were still alive, laughing and smoking brown cigarettes, and the air hazy with burning and a pending rain. All these things are buried now and belong to an amnesiac earth. Certain moments I feel the full weight of their disappearance, like when it is quiet at night and I realize returning is only illusion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Marcia Major,
Aloha.
page 177.
Aloha, and thank you, Bamboo Press, and for welcoming me, I can't speak, into your ohana, my second round of work that's been published here. I've been a writer, professional writer and author since the late 70s. I've written many, many books, fiction and nonfiction. I'd love you to visit my website where you can find out more about the things that I do, which is my full name, marciazinamajor.com. And the only promotion I'll do is that one of my pandemic projects was I made a 10-minute inspirational film with my creative partner. It's called The Diamond Necklace, celebrating the ups and downs of life's journeys. And it's inspired by the show that I co-wrote called Money Talks, but what the hell is it saying, that I performed all over Hawaii and Colorado. So come visit me at my website.
It's fun.
And thank you. And so I'm gonna read two poems. And the first one is titled Epitaph. And the story, the story behind this poem is that in the 1980s, following a near fatal car accident that I was in. I came back to New York City, to Manhattan, where I lived, my head wrapped in bandages. And I sat for a long time in Central Park, which was my favorite spot, really pondering my mortality. And I had a vision there. I saw two teenagers, a boy and girl, in my mind, romping through a sunny graveyard. They seemed very happy. And when they stopped, it was at my gravestone. And instead of the gravestone having the typical "here lies so-and-so," what was etched on my gravestone were these words: "Write me a poem." And I was so struck by that because I thought, wow, imagine if all the gravestones had beautiful invitations like that. And then the poem came and fell into my lap. And it's titled Epitaph. Write me a poem. Use the words you were born with, the words you grew up with, the words you speak every day of your life. Don't bring me a rose from a garden you did not grow. Better the thick green stalk of a weed grown wild and unbidden behind the steps of your back porch. Better a handful of parched grass plucked fitfully from your own lawn. Write me a poem and let me hear your voice, unsmooth, raucous, irritating as the sound of a rusty tricycle trundling by. Let me see your face, scarred and uncared for, unwashed and unshaven, tender and sad. Write me a poem and deliver it to my mossy grave with a ragged bunch of flowers planted and picked by your hand, and read me your words. I will listen. And beneath the earth and upon the winds and across the seas, I will sound my applause in the song of the tiny sparrow as she flies forever home. Thank you. The second poem, no introduction, is just titled Entrance. Finally, I understand the lotus the Chinese masters sing about. Our lives like petals push up and open, grand and fruitful, bounty in bright yellow. We think our lives prepare us for something so much greater, a hidden blossom, a secret berry, teasing like a streak of sapphire before the rising of the sun. But like the lotus, we prepare for nothing. The Chinese masters giggle. They understand the joke. We open finished. We open fruitful, forever opening, reaching toward an entrance, never there. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. Okay, we're on the home stretch and we'll have time for lots of questions. So our next writer is Dawn Morais. Dawn is on page 189.
Mom, you're muted.
Children listening in, you know. My daughter is in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and my son and daughter-in-law here in, oh, there they are, and my grandson.
Good.
And his other grandmother.
Hello.
Oh, there he is. He's the reason for this poem, this young man here, because I'm slow to publish. I mean, I'm so honored to be here. I'm so thrilled to have been published yet again in Bamboo Ridge. Jean and Juliet, thank you so much for liking my work. But this poem is proof that not only am I a slow writer, I'm slower even to publish, because this was written in the year 2000 and 20 years later, it's out in the world. So how
better late than ever.
You know, at this time in that summer of 2000 was really special. More than anything else, I defined myself as a mother. And here was my firstborn, my beloved son, heading off to college, and I was terrified and proud and thrilled and worried and knowing that I was going to miss him terribly. We were living in Singapore and he was going up to the University of British Columbia. And I thought, how will I bear this? And we were sitting at this moment on the at the shores of the magnificent river Shenandoah in Pennsylvania, because my husband, who's from there, takes us back there annually. And he had both our children, Zubin and Sheila Jane, out in the water, teaching them to fish. And I don't swim, so I'm sitting in the shallows in a chair watching them. And the sun is just streaming through these magnificent trees by the riverbanks. The water is flowing beautifully. It's just a perfect day and every day. And I forget a lot of things, but I've never forgotten that moment. And it's out of that moment that this poem emerged. I'm glad too that this poem is out in the world at a time when my younger brother Justin has a brilliant son who's headed off to the London School of Economics in September, and I have a niece who's got a daughter, a beautiful daughter who's going off to UCLA, my old alma mater, in September. So I hope this poem also resonates with them. There are two words at the end of this poem, shun, that refers to the spirit part of the psyche, and doa, which is the Malay word for prayer. So, Shenandoah, for my son Zubin, July 20th, the year 2000. Best seat in the house. Long grass loops around my chair. Swift water laps my back, but I do not care except delightedly. Will I be carried back, or is this just the flow, the shimmer of a dream purposeful? Like you, my son, fast, hard to pin down, a steady rush of energy, contained yet chafing past, restraining banks, pure light, restless, robust, bright. Liquid silver laces over tree green water running deep. See it skate sand and stone, smooth, shape and hone the ground below. Fish leap out of the steady hum into the light that streams down from ridges that run with the river in endless possibility. A million suns have warmed the thick boughs that stretch across big water, reaching far and out, design and destiny. The artist I will never be commits these moments to memory. I see your strong arms swing your bat in mad ecstasy, yelling, "Pops, catch!" Knee deep in the water, Pops holds up his sunfish, baited and brought up, only to be let go into the current. Swift, unceasing, seeking bigger waters, a braver show. Sitting in this mighty river, my Shen lives in Doha, and I'm as eager as my son. I feel the current, and I let go. Thank you. Listening in also was my beloved, precious grandson, Ara Victor, in the arms of his mother, my wonderful daughter-in-law, Ani. And Ani, you're going to go through the very same thing.
It's a family affair today.
Yes, it is.
Okay, last but not least, we have Cathy Song, page 230. Cathy? Where is Cathy?
She was there a minute ago.
Yeah.
I think you're muted.
Are
She's
you
there.
muted? Okay.
I just asked her to unmute. She should mute in a second.
Sheila Jane, you're not doing your job.
We're moving along. That's why I think.
I know.
Is it
We'll have
okay?
time for-
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
We can see you too.
You can hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me?
Yes. Can you hear us?
Okay.
We can hear you.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Juliet, for your labor of love. Thank
You're
you to
welcome.
Bamboo Ridge for always being there as a place where we can gather our voices together. I have two poems in this issue, but I'll just read one called The Tree of Life, which is about the difficulty of finding one's way, one's purpose, oneself in this life. The Tree of Life. Blessings upon the boy who, despite himself, climbed the tree of life. Discouraged by what he perceived as the ease of others, those who scrambled quicker, higher, he fell. The worm of doubt entered the heartwood, splintered his vision into a prism of glass shards. Thoughts twisted into twigs, kindling for the story he kept trying to light, spelling with the alphabet of fear all the ways that he was not good enough. The story grew unmanageable, lit by a single feeble bloom of sulfur. He fell into fissures hidden by air-spun moss. He fell into groundlessness. Those who loved him shouted, calling him back. He could see them peering over the rim, arms waving frantically. He could see their mouths moving, exhorting him to help himself. He watched as the rope they flung hung cursive like lace and collapsed. They receded, dim figures trapped in a paperweight of falling snow. He sought sleep as a refuge, but sleep, pierced by whispering tongues, refused to come. The mother sat outside the door and wept, and when she was done, she began to repair that which had been left untended, that which had become undone, beginning with the smallest tasks, a missing button, a frayed pocket. She pulled the invisible thread of grief into finished seams, as if by such stitching she could, in her vigil, return the boy to his skin. The father sat and waited with the patience of stones, and when he was done, he began to dig waist deep into night. Shoveling bales of dirt, he shifted earth, carried water, bringing into a shimmering form what had been rubble. By morning, a pond appeared, cloud-flecked, wind-rippled, its surface returning to stillness undisturbed. Rain purled on a leaf like a tear on the boy's eyelid. Silence seeped in with the persistence of water dripping through rock, dislodging the boy from the cramped letters of his name. Bowing under the weight, the leaf tipped, spilling pools, and gently lifted empty.
Thank you. Okay, now, if you don't have your issue of number 118, you've just listened and watched the writers who have moved you, delighted you, and touched you. So you should get your issue. Now, Cathy did not do her thing. So I'm going to ask you to take a look at her last novel. You will be moved and delighted with this too. So thank you very much for joining us. We're ready for questions, comments, if you have them. I don't see anything in any chat. So maybe Donald, you see questions?
No, but I've been posting links to everyone's collections and books from the Bamboo Ridge bookstore in the chat, so you can kind of check out Cathy's collection I just posted, as well as 118. But check out the bookstore, a lot of various sales going on there, a lot of great savings, and all the funds go to support Bamboo Ridge, which is the only independent publisher of local stories and poetry collections in Hawaii, I believe, a nonprofit, the local publisher that's independent as well. And you can also subscribe. Oh, go ahead.
Excuse me. The longest self-sustaining publisher, perhaps in the whole United States. Others have gone defunct. No institutional, continuous support. Just people working hard and with their hearts. So, okay. Do I have any other thing? No questions? You know, I had estimated maybe an hour and a half because there were so many writers, but look, we've done it in less than an hour. And I had some questions or comments. Anybody? Anybody?
I'm happy to ask a quick question.
Sure.
This is a question that, of course, I'd love my mom to answer, Dawn Morais. It's a shameless daughter-mother question, but it's a question that's also, I think, open to any poets who would like to respond. I'd love to hear my mom and anyone else talk briefly about how you arrived at the particular form of your poem. maybe what structures did you play with on your way to the final piece? Just a little bit about the form and the shape that your poem ended up taking.
Thank you. Mom?
You know, that's the trouble with having a daughter who's an English professor. She turns the question back on you. You're not supposed to ask questions like that, Sheila Jane. Plus, I'm not sure I'm the best qualified to speak on this. I've not published nearly as much as so many of the other poets that are on this forum, like Cathy and Anne and Lanning and Joe and others. So I find I'm doing this little talk about the value of poetry, and I think the form is sort of determined by the moment and by the demands of the moment. And in some cases, it's a question of wanting to express praise. Sometimes it's a question of wanting to express protest. And I like the way Joe sort of punctuated his sentence, his lines in a way that added meaning to it. And I think it was very intentional. So I think, for me at least, the moment defines the poem. I play with the initial words and they I think they deliver as, who was it who just said, was it Cathy or someone just talked about being in Central Park? No, it's Marcia. Talked about being in Central Park and having this vision and it sort of, it suggests a form almost of its own volition. And you literally go with the flow. So in some ways it's kind of like, what I was talking about with Shenandoah. I went with the flow of the moment, and I'll leave it at that and let others better qualified than me to answer it. Anne, you want to chime in?
Well, thank you. I guess for me, I totally agree with what Don was saying, where a lot of times a poem will come to you in a certain form. Yeah, that might be the best form for that particular idea. For example, I write in standard English, but I also write pidgin poems, and some ideas are better in pidgin, although, yeah, I mean, for me, it takes a, it takes a little more, yeah, it takes a lot of more time for me to write something in pidgin versus standard English. But yeah, sometimes the topic that you want to write about determines what form it takes. Yeah, and I agree with what Don was saying earlier, where sometimes it just comes to you in what so many of the other authors here said, where sometimes it just comes to you and it appears like it was meant to be in that form, and other times it just takes a longer time where it's like, okay, this isn't working, maybe I'll try a different route. And yeah, so it's kind of like a mixture of different types of techniques of crafts. So
but sometimes the form also dictates the poem. And for my husband's 60th birthday, he had been telling me forever about stories of growing up in Pennsylvania. And he said, who's going to remember these stories? And so I found myself collecting these stories, and I thought, now how do I render them? They not really lend themselves to a long narrative, but they're almost like little vignettes. And I had never written a sonnet before that. So I wrote this series of sonnets, which also Juliet and Jean published in an earlier issue of Bamboo Ridge, under this title of Just a Boy from New Brighton. But it captures moments from my husband's childhood in sort of picture postcard format. And the discipline of the sonnet forced me to sort of marshal what the little that I knew from the things you were saying, it's sort of like, we tend to sort of talk about inspiration, but then there's also a lot of perspiration in trying to make it work.
Thank you. Anyone else talk about the?
Yeah, that was an interesting question about form. I'm also probably not very qualified. I don't have a college education. I've written 12 books. So I'm one of these.
You don't need a college education.
I did 1 year of college. I never took a writing course.
You sound very educated, Marcia.
but the only reason I say it is because it was a very English professor type of question. And I like a lot of what you said, Dawn, is I feel certainly for me in the poetry that I've written over the years, since I was a child, I was writing poetry. The form, in my experience, is organically married to the yes. energy and the music that comes through. Yes. My experience of writing poetry is I hear a song. And I'm not imposing any kind of structure, although I think it could be very creatively exciting to say, I'm going to write a sonnet. For instance, I've written rap. I wrote a rap song. I've written slam poetry. But the first slam poem, for instance, that I wrote, that's just wonderful. I had no idea what slam poetry is. I didn't know I wrote a slam poem. I wrote this thing that I then shared in this creative class I was in. And somebody said to me, oh my God, that's a slam poem. You got to go to the slam event and you have to perform it. I'm like, oh, I wrote a slam poem. So I guess what I'm saying is the organic quality is really, really important, because that's really going to dictate the form. And I think we run into problems if we have this idea that it should be a certain form and we're trying to squeeze this beautiful energy that's come through into a form. So I think it's a dance, and it's really important that it be an organic dance. At least that's my experience.
Thank you, Marcia. Anyone else? Jennifer, how was it writing that poem one day for 30 days in a row?
It's hard, especially because I have, I'm going to say, side gig working in the tech industry. And pre-COVID times, I traveled 40% of the year. So part of the time that I was doing the 30 poems for 30 days, I was actually in Belgium for 10 days, but was disciplined enough to be able to do a poem every day. And sometimes it was just some notes and I would finish it the following day. I guess that's a little bit of cheating, but I did do it. And
yeah.
Some great work out of it. Actually, a lot of it has actually been published. So I don't have a full length work, maybe someday, but a lot of those actually got published and picked up in various journals. So it was a really, really gratifying thing to do.
Yeah, the reason I said that, because I had a mentor many decades ago who told me, you have to write a poem a day. You have to write a poem a day.
Yes.
And I never did it until the beginning of the pandemic. And so I have written a poem a day for over a year, which I pat myself back on. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. It just kind of, I like the word organic and the energy there. And somehow the impulse, the energy finds its form. So, thank you, everybody. Any more questions? Any more comments?
Cathy, were you going to add to that other question?
Oh yeah, I was just going to say that I don't write in any kind of form, classic form, but I'm waiting for that first line. I kind of have a feeling of what I'm trying to say, but it's just waiting for that first line that sets the music for me. And that's the hard part, sitting there for hours waiting for those words to coalesce into a line that's going to guide the music of the poem.
Only hours? It only takes hours? I mean, it comes within hours?
Hours.
On the same day or on
Lots of
different
times I tell my
days?
kids, don't mind me, I'm just staring out the window.
You know, I wanted to add one more thing that I think would be fun to add to this this discussion is that, you know, I'm also a book coach, so I work with clients and stuff, and so I'm often working sometimes with corporate clients, people that don't have a lot of experience, and people are always asking me, you know, how do you write a book? And I think, I'm a quote freak. I love quoting poets and writers and philosophers. You know, I love those sound bites. And so there's this wonderful quote that even though they're talking about a novel in this quote, I'll share it with you. You could replace the word novel with poem. And it's from Somerset Maugham, who wrote Of Human Bondage so many years ago. And, you know, I always present this in sort of a dramatic way, saying, you know, okay, get ready. Here's the secret. Everybody always wants to know, how do you do it? How do you write a book? How do you write a poem? And here's what he says. He says, there are 3 rules to writing a novel. And again, you could replace it with a poem. There are 3 rules to writing a novel.
Right.
Unfortunately, no one knows what they are. And, you know, I think that really speaks to the creative process in my experience, is that in the end, we're just the stewards of an energy. And yes, I mean, we end up molding it and shaping it. But, you know, in the end, it's this mysterious thing that comes from this mysterious place that we get to dance with for a few minutes or a few hours or whatever. So that's my final comment.
Thank you very much.
There's a line from a poem by W.S. Merwin called Berryman. He's talking about his teacher, and I think I'm getting it close to right. It's a bit of a couplet, and he says, "How can you know if it's any good?" And his professor Berryman replies to him, "You can't ever know. And if you have to know, don't write."
I wanted to add a comment. I like the sound bites too. And Mom, since Mom came up, was asked near the end of his days if he could reflect on his work and talk about, you know, what really happened to him and what he, you know, fictionalized. And he said, "I can't remember anymore. When I look at my stories, I'm not sure what happened and what didn't." So I just thought I'd throw that in. I think of him a lot when I write.
Really? Somerset? Huh. Okay. Anybody sitting there with something they're dying to say, but they're not saying it?
Someone asked about how are you all faring in your work with Stop Asian Hate?
Sheila Jane.
Yes, Mom. That question's not for me.
Well, there's been so much going on in Pennsylvania that you've been directly involved in. I'm sure many would like to hear about it.
I wrote a poem. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The minute I knew that there was this virus that was coming from China, I wrote the first line of a poem called "Yellow Peril is on the Rise."
Oy.
And all through last year, I worked on this poem, and I just knew this is what was going to happen. Yellow peril is on the rise. Fear of it never dies. And I think working on this poem, which I drew in all the instances of historical examples of where there was this yellow peril tension, specifically in regard to the United States and Asia, I think helped me to deal with it when it really started getting bad. Having already kind of written this poem, that's how I was dealing with it.
Good. Are you going to publish it?
I'd love to publish it.
I know, submit it to the next editor. Anyone else?
I had a few lines in a poem, the end of a poem. You guys saw it, the last study group, referring to my blonde-haired, blue-eyed grandson, wondering what kind of world we were making for him when the murder of Asian women is not considered a hate crime.
Yeah.
I think writers tend to write about the events. Yeah, like I wrote a poem in Pidgin in regards to the massacre, you know, that was happening at the Asian spas, and you know, and how tired it is. You know, everyone's tired of it because it's so, I don't know, it's just so crazy. It doesn't make sense. Well, racism doesn't make sense, but I think a lot of times a lot of writers use their voices to combat racism and combat a lot of these negative stereotypes and hate occurring. So I think it's very useful to, you know, now is a great time to write, especially if you're upset about something that needs to be corrected or rectified. So it's a good time to write now.
Yeah. So all of you go out and write something. And thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Donald, for doing what you do. Bye.